Welcome everyone to this presentation on programming. My name is Cahill and I'm the Education Director for APEC. I am joined today by Dave Downey, who is in charge of sports rehabilitation for us, but is also the UK Education Manager. And then we also have Cahill, who looks after our social media for us, who will be assisting us in the recording of the presentation today. So I know some of you have heard it before, so for that I apologize, but we've a couple of new people joining us today. So just a little overview of the company, what we do, where we're going. So we are a sports performance and fitness education company. We started as a strength and conditioning company working with teams and athletes in Ireland, and in our heyday, and when I say our heyday, I mean only a year ago, just before the pandemic, we would work with 500 athletes. We'd have about 500 athletes on cycle yearly. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we regressed, okay, the methods and systems that we used with athletes and teams, and started to deliver those systems and methods back to coaches through education courses. And those courses today are personal training, strength and conditioning, nutrition, and health coaching diplomas. So we as a company specialize now in educating coaches looking to step into the world of physical performance coaching. The purpose of today's workshop, okay, it is one of the workshops that goes hand in hand with the personal training qualification or diploma. And it is its primary purpose is to close the knowledge gap when it comes to programming. Programming can be sometimes a scary module or modality of personal training to consider because it's so big and broad. So that's what we're going to try and do today, is we're going to close that knowledge gap that exists around programming. How are we going to do that? We are going to provide you with a systems-based approach to exercise programming. Okay, so the presentation format will run as follows. The first thing we're going to touch on is the 3 pillars of personal training. Then we'll go into assessment and goals, how we structure that. Then we look at the PAA system, which is our system that we've built in APEC that we use with all the people that we work with. We're going to look at programming and periodization. I will then conclude that part of the lecture, and Dave will take over and he'll run through a live case study format of someone he's worked with in the past, and we will practically show you how to apply all the different methods and systems that I talked about in the first part of the lecture. Okay, the first thing to consider when doing any qualification is the components that make up that qualification. When it comes to personal training, there's a lot for you guys to be thinking of, and personal training can be very layered and can be very in-depth as an actual profession. What you need to do as a coach is you need to concentrate on 3 things, and those 3 things are movement, so the biomechanical aspect of coaching, nutrition, so how to apply nutrition and at least understand it at the very foundational level, and exercise programming. If you master those 3 pillars, you will find yourself in a very strong position as a coach, okay? So movement, nutrition, and exercise programming. Understandably, each of those modalities within personal training, they are very layered. I understand that, and they have multiple different components to them. But at a very high level view, to keep it very simple in how we approach things, we need to concentrate on the movement aspect of what we do. So ingraining good movement patterns into the people that we work with, applying the kind of government guidelines around nutrition, understand your micros, your macros, your hydration, and then how we actually apply the programming aspect of what we do back to our clients or exercise programming. Okay, the first thing that we need to do before we get anywhere near programming is we need to go through an assessment and we need to go through goal setting. So why is an assessment important? The assessment allows you as the coach to identify areas of weaknesses and strengths. For example, someone might have a very strong upper body, but a weak lower body. Therefore, our programming needs to reflect that and needs to focus on strengthening people's weaknesses. Or another prime example of that is someone might have a very high BMI versus a very low BMI. And if the person's overall goal is to lose weight, the program needs to be focused around that, reducing their BMI, or vice versa. If someone has a very low body mass index and they need to put on some muscle mass, put on some healthy weight, the focus of the program needs to be around that. So the saying goes, you can't change what you don't measure. So you need to be able to measure and have some type of assessment that will be able to, where you will be able to identify goals at the early stage of program. Very, very, very important. Why is goal setting important? It helps you define the goal of the program, like we talked about, fat loss or strength. But it also gives the opportunity, or gives your client or the person you're working with the opportunity to express to you the goals that they might want to achieve from programming. So there's two different aspects we need to consider here. We as the coach, the expert, the subject matter expert, we need to be able to establish a set of goals as well as the client establishing a set of goals. And what we got to do is we've got to make sure that they're aligned. At the end of the day, we are the expert. We're the one with the training and coaching science knowledge. So we have to first understand what the client wants, and then we have to create a clear pathway to getting that goal. So it also gives your client confidence in you as a coach that you're able to establish goals for what they want to try and achieve. So the assessment and goal setting procedure, very, very, very important at the start of programming. Dave will show you how this is done through our case study in the second part of this lecture. Okay, the system that we use, and it does not matter whether we are working with athletes or we're working with general population. The system that we use when we're working with people is the PAA system. That's how we program. We use a thing called the PAA system, which stands for Primary, Assistance, and Accessory. Coaches need to be able to apply a system-based approach when training people. Why? A system is a coordinated body of methods. So just so you know, a method is a way of doing something. So if I want to become fitter, a method to becoming fitter is cycling, running, rowing, swimming. They are all methods that I can use to become fitter. Whereas a system-based approach provides coaches with the utilization of multiple different training methods, depending on who you are dealing with, the environment you are training in, and the equipment you have at your disposal as a coach. So very important to think, what is my system? What system am I using when I'm programming? And the system that's before you here today is the PAA system, the Primary, Assistance, and Accessory. So let's look at each component of the system. So the primary exercise, okay, this is the first exercise in the program. This exercise normally requires the highest central nervous system drive or output to perform the exercise. So if you think about an exercise like a squat or a deadlift or a bench press, they're all big compound exercises, and they should be placed at the start of the program, and they require the biggest central nervous system response or drive in order to perform the exercise. The primary exercise should be focused on improving or at least achieving the goal of the program. So if the goal of the program is to become stronger in the lower body, the first exercise in the program should represent that and should be trying to achieve the goal. So again, if the goal is to become stronger, we know that squats or deadlifts will achieve that for us, especially in our lower body. So therefore, an exercise like a squat would be a good example of a primary exercise. The next section of the PAA system is the assistance exercise. Now, the assistance exercise is the second exercise in the program, okay? And it requires a slightly lower central nervous system drive to perform the exercise. It supports the primary exercise and is normally posterior chain in nature. So if we think about our primary exercise being our squat, a good assistant exercise is something like an RDL or a hamstring curl. Why? Because we know that the posterior chain supports someone's ability to perform an exercise like a squat. So the next time that client goes back to trying to do the squat, they will have improved their posterior chain, which is the foundation for people to be able to perform big compound movements like a squat. So the second exercise, which is your primary exercise, or with your second exercise, which is your assistance exercise, supports the primary exercise and traditionally tends to be in the posterior chain. So it tends to be in your upper back if it's an upper body exercise, or your glutes, your hamstrings, your hips if it's a lower body exercise. The assistance exercise can be made up of more than one exercise. So you can have two assistance exercises. Both of them should be geared around supporting your client, so the next time they go back to perform the primary exercise, they are better at performing that exercise. Therefore, they are closer to achieving the goal of the program, which is potentially becoming stronger. Finally, we have the accessory. So the accessory part of the program is any work performed after the primary and assistance lifts. This section of the program is designed to improve what's called general physical preparation or preparedness, a thing called GPP. It's designed for you as a coach to be able to program so that you can strengthen weaknesses. And it's also, this section of the program actually splits into three different components. So the first component is proprioception, where you work on some type of structural balance stuff, maybe around the ankles, the knees, the hips, or the shoulders. So you can choose to develop proprioception with your client, and you'll find with a lot of clients there's a lot of imbalances. So at the end of the program, when their central nervous system is fired up, this is a great opportunity to go and tackle some of those deficiencies you might have or your client might have around the ankle, the knee, the hip, the shoulder, whatever the case may be. The second section of the accessory part of the program is energy system development or conditioning. So if a goal of your client is to reduce body fat, this is a great opportunity for you to give them some energy system development. At the end of the program, when they're depleted of glycogen at the end of the training session, they can jump on a bike, a row, or a treadmill, 10, 15-minute hit at the end of the session, works wonders in terms of energy, some conditioning at the end of the program. Or most commonly used is the hypertrophy method or the repetition method, where you can increase the amount of reps you're doing. Obviously, you'll have an element of fatigue. So your clients will be fatigued at the end of the program from going through their primary lifts and their assistance lifts. And it's a great opportunity to get in some high repetition, endurance-based exercises at the end of the program. Now, we're not saying that you have to have all three components at the end of your program. But when it comes to personal training, you normally find one or two of these components at the end of the program. So for someone starting off, you might have a little bit of some circuit training would achieve the conditioning and the hypertrophy effect that you're trying to maybe accomplish for your client at the end of the program. So we're not saying you have to have all three. You can focus on one. If a client comes into you, you have very bad shoulder pain, you can spend all your time after you do your prime lift and your assistance lift. You can spend all your accessory time working on the proprioceptive values that you need to. Or you can spend all your time working on conditioning, if conditioning is a main goal of the program. Or again, if putting on some good, healthy muscle mass is the goal of the program, you can spend your time around that. And again, Dave will show you in detail how he incorporates two of these components of the accessory stage of the program. I know there's a couple of layers to that, and I will answer any questions that you guys have on this at the very end. Okay, so now that we have an understanding of the PAA system that we use when we're trying to establish exercise selection for our clients, we as coaches also have to be thinking a little bit long term. So we have to be thinking what's going to happen in 4, 8, 12 weeks down the road from now. A lot of the time when it comes to novice coaches, especially in personal training and in strength and conditioning as well, coaches fail to be able to establish long-term goals for the clients and athletes that they work with. And as a result, the water gets very, very murky very quickly, and your programming and your exercise selection can become directionless. So by having laid out long-term goals in terms of kind of 12, 24 weeks down the road, you as a coach know where you're going, and it shows confidence to the clients that you're working with that you have a long-term plan laid out for them. So in front of you is a typical or a traditional model that we would use when we're bringing personal training clients from the time of inception when they start working with you to where they need to go to achieve their goals. So the first phase of training that we would put someone through is called a sensation phase. And this is where we're trying to expose the client to work capacity through movement. This phase normally lasts 10 to 12 weeks. It can be shorter, it can be longer. That is very much dependent upon you as a coach to be able to analyze and check the progressions of your client. The sensation phase really sensations towards movement and movement quality. You're building the foundation that the client needs to progress on, and the repetition range tends to be very high, 10 and above, and it's all endurance based. And it's endurance based because, like I said, you're trying to build a very good foundation, and the emphasis here is on movement. So let me give you an example. If you know that the end goal is to make your client's lower body strong with a squat, in the sensation phase here is a great opportunity for you to develop really good squat patterns. So goblet squats, box squats, any type of squat variation, regression. This is a great opportunity to develop motor control within the client that you work with. The next phase is the tolerance phase. And this phase, again, traditionally can last 10 to 12 weeks, can be longer, can be shorter, depending on how your client progresses. This is where we get an adaptation to load. So the body starts to adapt to load, the load it's lifting. So again, the reps are in and around 6 to 10. And the good movement patterns you've ingrained in the sensation phase, over the next 12-week period, you're starting to add load to those movement patterns. And now the body's central nervous system is adapting to dealing with load over time. Like I said, the reps tend to be in and around the 6 to 10 mark. Finally, if your client has gotten that far, you would move on to what's called the realization phase. Again, this phase can last 10 to 12 weeks, can be shorter, can be longer, depending upon the client. This is where you really start to build intensity. So intensity in terms of the amount, the intensity of the lift, the total load of the lift. This is where you start to develop true strength. So reps can drop down to as far as kind of 1 to 6. This is where you start to develop myofibrillar type hypertrophy. So the muscle fibers, you develop functional strength. They start to become a little bit thicker, but your client starts to get really, really, really strong in the realization phase. And once you've gotten them this far, and you've achieved and developed lower body strength, if that is the goal, or upper body strength, if that is the goal, your client has achieved and they've reached their goal. And at this stage, programming takes a slightly different direction, but you as a coach will have had exposure to working with your client over the last, I think this could last anywhere from 6 to 9 months. So programming becomes a little more complex when you're dealing with strong clients. But if you were to bring your client through all those different phases, the sensation phase, the tolerance phase, and then the realization phase, your client will be a long way down the road to achieving the goal that they set out to achieve, whether that is, you know, hypertrophy, muscle, healthy weight, muscle mass, or else becoming stronger. So just to conclude on what I talked about over the last 5 or 6 slides, concentrate on the 3 fundamental pillars that make up a good personal trainer. Those pillars are movement, nutrition, and programming, okay? Movement, nutrition, and exercise programming. Make sure you establish goals from your assessment, as this will give direction as to what you need to focus on when constructing effective exercise programs. Become a systems-driven coach by using the PAA system to help you guide yourself through your programming construct. The art of successful programming takes time. Understand what the long-term goals are and how you want to achieve them. As a coach with your clients, such as developing the sensation phase, where you're building familiarity around movement, the tolerance phase, where you're building exposure to load, and then the realization phase, where you're building exposure to intensity. So you'll start to see that inverse relationship between load, which is high repetitions, and intensity, which is total weight lifted. You'll start to see that inverse relationship. One will drop while the other one will rise. So any questions on anything that we've talked about there, guys, we will answer at the end. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass you over to Dave, and he's going to bring you through a live case study of a client that he's worked with. He's going to show you how he implemented the PAA system when programming. He's going to show you how he implemented the sensation phase over a 12-week period. And like I said, if you have any questions about this at the end, please do feel free to drop them in the chat box and I will answer them. And I would also encourage you guys to, if you have any questions, like kind of real world problems that you come up against, either with your own training or clients that you're working with, drop them in here and we'll do some problem-based learning at the end. Okay, Dave, over to you, mate.
Lovely, thanks, Shane. So the best way for me to do this is to actually just share one of the case studies templates. So I have one done up, and I have chosen basically, I see a lot of people like this because of my own rugby background, and you'll see that where people come to you when they read your own history that they can relate to. So let's have a little look at needs analysis first about who actually we're looking at here. So John, age 42. 5'10", 97.5 kg, and considers himself pretty sedentary over the last kind of 8 to 10 years. So little bit of injury history for himself. So he gets pain in his upper back after a long day at work. He's never been to see a physio about it, but it's general ache after sitting for a long day, which, I mean, really, you're going to see that in a lot of clients. That's what they're going to complain of. And then the next one here, so has a sore shoulder on and off since he stopped playing rugby. And that's generally true overhead movements, which bring on the pain. And it's not massively acute, but he would describe that as just kind of like a niggle. So then when we move forward into exercise history, this is just about basically his outline for a general week. So Monday, he would do no exercise. Tuesday, walks to and from the train, so a total of 2.5 kilometers there and back, which again is obviously not a lot. Wednesday, nothing. Thursday, might do a home workout, so circuit style, but realistically, when he has said that or expressed that, you can tell in your interviewing that it's very rare. Friday, nothing. Saturday, he might play with his kids, kick a ball around and the likes, and Sunday, nothing. So you can see there that from someone that's quite sedentary through work, no real exercise, but has a history of exercise through rugby. So basically just falling off the wagon there a little bit with that. So then training questionnaire, where we go through this, and you'll all have this template obviously for your case study. So please list the modalities of training which you enjoy. So John used to love weights and circuits just because of rugby training, really, and he expressed a real interest in heavy leg weights especially. So he likes to feel strong. Modalities that he doesn't like, hates slow cardio machine workouts. So nothing kind of long and slow. He said he gets bored quite easily at that. And that is, again, is another general one that you will see from clients. So then you asked John to rank his goals in order of importance. So really you're looking at 1, 2, and 3 here. So improve health, improve strength, and improve endurance. And then the rest kind of he didn't express much interest in, but these are his main focuses there. So the health questionnaire, the only yeses we've got, which these are actually really important, and they are missed quite often, but the only ones we're looking at here is sports injury, which he had, several bangs through his career. And then we've got another yes here, which is muscular aches and pains. Again, so he's talking there about the shoulder and the upper back, which we've just touched on. So when we move forward to your client assessment, so we look here at lower body strength and upper body strength. So for me, it's not applicable yet because he's been out of training for so long. The sensation phase is going to be the one we're really, really paying attention to here. So this is more so the strength, endurance, and fitness that we're going to test originally or first, and then the movement quality. So we don't want to really test maximal strength until we've gone through a full phase, so we know he's actually robust enough to deal with that testing. So we're going to look at strength endurance, something really simple. So how many continuous bodyweight squats can you complete before stopping? So John's looking at 36 bodyweight squats there before the burn just got too much and he stopped. And then a nice easy fitness test that we did, 2-minute walk and 8-minute jog at 8.5 kilometers per hour on a treadmill. And then we just basically do a test out of 10 on difficulty. And John is expressing there a 6 out of 10 difficulty for that fitness test. Really easy one that we can go back and test again on both aspects there. So when we move forward for your client wellness assessment, so I'll zoom in a little bit here so you can see it. So these are really nice ones to link in, and we obviously have this algorithm here, so it maps it for you on the case study. So motivation to train and change, basically. So currently he's at a 7 and he wants to be fully up at a 10. So he wants to make the change now, knows he'll have more motivation and keep going once he starts to see progression. Obviously he has history with exercise, so he knows that once he's at that fitness level he likes, he's really motivated to keep going. So it's just getting him there basically and motivating him. Sleep quality, so at the moment he's currently at a 5. He's never been amazing at sleeping, so his aim is to get it up to solid 8 hours sleep a night. And the module will actually go through some aspects of that. I won't delve into it now just because it'll take too long, but it's a really nice one to target with your client, because it makes a huge difference, as we know. Stress control, then again, he's quite low, so he's at a 5. He's recently seen his decrease in his patience, and he wants to negate that as much as he can, obviously for his kids, just home life and work. Digestion, so he's never really had a problem. He used to suffer with heartburn, but that's generally kind of gone now. Energy levels are quite low, obviously linked to his lack of fitness at the moment. He wants to get that up, so he doesn't have much energy, but he spends time. He wants to spend more time basically playing with his kids. Recovery, he doesn't see much of a problem with that at the moment, but that's obviously he's not very active, so we might come back to that one after every week, and we might touch on that and see how his recovery is actually doing. Activity level, as we said, he's quite sedentary and he wants to get that up. And nutrition knowledge, so he says that he's generally quite knowledgeable on it. He just doesn't have the motivation to actually implement what he knows he should. So that's another thing that we'll touch on there. So recovery and motivation are kind of things that we can do weekly, just due to communicating with our clients nice and efficiently. So when we move forward then into performance testing, so this is obviously your assessment and stuff before you even program, which we touched, Shane said is very important. So the main goals or aims for John, obviously, he wants to be stronger. 2, he wants to be fitter so he can play with his kids. 3, he wants better body composition. So obviously we all want to look better. It's part and parcel with going to the gym. 4, for himself, to not have that niggle or pain in his shoulder, even though it's intermittent. So he wants to negate the pain that's coming from that upper torso, so upper back and shoulder. So we can touch on that with programming. And then the last one, just to get his confidence back. So I skipped these measurements here just because we won't be doing 3 rep max testing, and I don't have the measurements there for that. So we'll move forward on that. So next, we're looking at a nice important one here. So your movement competency, or the analysis of a movement pattern. And we've gone through this movement screening in one of the webinars before, but let's just have a little look here. So your squat pattern. So John, we scored him a 2, so average enough. So really efficient through his lower limbs. So hips, hamstrings, everything okay, but definitely a roundness in the T-spine. So we can see straight away that that's probably enough where that restriction or pain is coming from. So his hinge pattern, then very competent movement, so clearly weight trained previously. So that's a really nice one. So we don't have to target the coaching necessarily on that hinge, which is a real plus. Lunge pattern, then again, very competent, no problems. Active straight leg raise, so not far from 90 degrees, which is pretty impressive for someone who hasn't trained in so long. The scratch test then is one that we kind of probably we would know he would have been lacking just straight from your squat testing because of the restriction. So he's very restricted through his upper back and shoulders. So he gets a 1 for that. His toe touch then is pretty good. So he's got good movement through, although the roundness in his T-spine may actually be assisting that range. So we will assess that one again. We probably, if I was doing that, I might test that toe touch with a straight back, and we'd reevaluate that. But then his overhead reach test, straight away he got a niggle in the shoulder for that on that day, so we had to score him with a 0 there for pain. So then when we move into the weekly planner, so we talk through with John what he's actually going to do. So this training phase obviously is your sensation phase. So we are looking for that strength, endurance, and movement competencies. So we're looking at lower body on a Monday, 60 minutes or so, upper body on a Wednesday, lower body on a Friday. Now, the only reason I'm doing 2 lower bodies is because John obviously expressed his interest in lower body weights. And you obviously want to target what they're keen with, especially starting out, just so that motivation stays high. And obviously you get a lot more bang for your buck with the lower body exertion. And then I wanted to implement just something on the weekends for John. So he says he plays with his kids on the weekends, but we want to make sure that he's actually putting aside 60 minutes of actual activity. So proper, he might go for a hike or even just a walk, just so we knows that he's hitting the 60 minutes. So that's what we implemented for his training planner then. And then when we move forward into the actual phases, so we're looking at periodization here. So I'm going to look phase 1, 2, and 3, and this is your sensation phase we're going to touch on today. So realistically, we're just looking at, originally, the first kind of block, we're looking at strength endurance. So we're just trying to get neural adaptation. So he hasn't trained in years. So we're not going to push him overloading wise. We're just going to make sure that he's actually moving right and he's moving well. And he's just essentially adapting to the change. So his DOMs will obviously be quite bad originally. So we want to make sure that he's acclimatizing to load first before we overload it in the next 2 phases. And these are just going to stay the same for all. So movement competency is what we're really focusing on for the sensation phase. And obviously we're going to touch on just his aerobic ability. So general fitness too, which we'll do through the accessory of the programming. So let's have a little look at how I actually programmed for him. So week 1, this is going to be a lot of communication, getting to know each other, building rapport, making sure he's moving right. Big emphasis on warm-up, because you can get a lot done in the warm-up before you move in. So let's have a little look. So sensation phase, strength endurance, neural adaptation, week 1. So session 1, lower body, lower 1. So our raise phase is going to be something simple, just fast walk on a treadmill into a jog, just to raise that heart rate before we move on to any sort of activation or mobilization. So we're focusing here, if we have a look, so obviously it's a lower body session. So a little bit of glutes, a little bit of mobilization. So we've got your standing hip abduction, toe touches, world greatest stretch. You've got your leg swings forward and back and side to side. And then you've got your inchworms. So really, I mean, probably will be quite tough for John, but in terms of a warm-up will be perfect. And then when we potentiate before we go into our primary exercise, which is going to be a goblet squat, we're going to look at body weight squats into a single leg TRX squat to bench. And that's just to get him really primed to move into that primary work. So we've chosen a goblet squat because we know his lower limb is efficient and his movement patterns are really good, but he is lacking through that T-spine. And in the movements screening webinar, we would have touched on the goblet squat being a really good squat pattern to target the T-spine. So it almost puts you into like a front squat position. So you have to keep your elbows up, you have to keep your back nice and straight. So that in itself will target that T-spine, and it'll make him a more efficient and more robust squatter for when we then potentially move into a back squat later on. So we've got just your general 3 sets of 10 to start with, and we've chosen the 16 kg kettlebell for John because it didn't seem too tough, and we're going 3-1-1 with the tempo. Now you'll see here with thoracic openers, so because 2 to 3 minute rest is quite a lot, we can add in a corrective exercise here just while we're chatting and resting. So John is going to do some thoracic openers just to target his T-spine mobility while he's resting in that period. So then when we move on to our assistance work, so you'll see B1 and B2. So these are not supersetted, so they're just on their own, but they're both assistants to the goblet squat. So they will effectively make him stronger in this primary as we move forward. So we look at a dumbbell RDL. So we know his hinge pattern is great. We're looking at 60 to 90 seconds rest, and we're just doing 3x12 on our programming there for that. And then the same, so you got your lunge pattern, just body weight to begin with. So obviously we don't want to overload John straight away. This is the first session. So we just want to see how he takes to this load, and we will monitor that over the next kind of 2 to 4 weeks. If we move then into our accessory work, so we know that John wants to target his kind of general fitness, so he's nice and strong and fit for his kids. So we're going to look at rowing machine, 400 meters, step ups, body weight. So this is actually a little bit of proprioception work in here because it's unilateral. We'll do 40 seconds work of that. We'll target some core work here with a bear hold, and then we'll actually target his T-spine and shoulder stability with the WYT work here. So we're encompassing John's goals in this accessory work, and we're also targeting his general fitness. Just 2 sets to begin with, but we will increase that as well as we go on. So moving on then, session 2. General kind of your goal here is the same. So you got your strength endurance, your movement capacity, and your aerobic development. Same raise phase for John. So fast walk into a jog. And then when we look at our activation and mobilization, so band pull aparts, thoracic openers, scapular press ups, chest opener, and you got your band internal and external rotation. Very focused around the T-spine, very focused around the shoulder stability. So again, even in your warm up, you're still targeting those areas for him and getting him nice and primed, ready for his primary work. So potentiation work, press ups. So we're going hands on bench first, just to basically raise the center of gravity, so it's not as difficult for him. Obviously, he's carrying a bit of weight, so we just want to see how he takes to that first. And then we're going to add some explosive med ball throw. Not too many to fatigue him, just enough to fire the central nervous system. And that brings us into our primary work here, which is our bench press. So again, longer rest periods here, 3 by 10, nice controlled tempo as well. And our corrective exercise will be a javelin stretch, just to open up the chest and get the shoulders kind of moving. So bench press can be a real easy one to get kind of shoulder pinching. So this is why our warm up here has been so geared towards that stability and mobility. So assistance work, exact same. Okay, so assistance these exercises are going to assist in making him stronger in his primary movement. Again, they're not supersetted, so we're not trying to overload. We're going to look at a dumbbell single arm row, nice and strong, 22.5 kg. So he started off quite strong straight away, which is nice. And then we're going to move into our shoulder movement. So for me, half kneeling, bottoms up kettlebell shoulder press. If you don't know what it is, you can look it up, but it's a really, really nice exercise for shoulder stability. And it actually moves down into kind of the movement pattern of your scapula as well. So really nice exercise to target someone with shoulder pain. So that's why we've put that in there. Same reps, okay? Nice and easy, not too much overload. Then we're moving into the accessory. So we're into the circuit work. Again, we've got kind of your cardio-based equipment here. So ski erg for 350 meters, face pulls. So we're working into that upper back. Bicep curl for just a little bit of hypertrophy. So obviously we all want to look good in a t-shirt. So it's a nice one to stick in. The long head of the bicep actually attaches up into the shoulder area as well. So it is actually a nice one for stability in your shoulder. And then hyperextension. So again, we're targeting that posterior, we're targeting the lower back, and we're all encompassing into a circuit style for his aerobic development. So session 3, we're back to legs. Okay, same goals here, same raise phase. Potentially a little bit different in your activation and mobilization, because we're going to move into a deadlift. So you'll see here we've got a little bit of work, so scapular push-ups and band pull-aparts. We've got a little bit of work there into the rhomboids, so into the upper back, so we're nice and strong when we start into your deadlift. So your potentiation phase, we're going to do a little bit of a barbell complex with them. So just the empty bar, so just 15 or 20 kg depending. And you're going to do a bent over row into an RDL into a back squat. So it'll continue to raise the heart rate, and it'll just work through that potentiation. And then obviously trap bar, we're going to work from light all the way up to our working set, which is 75 kg for John. His corrective exercise is going to be a wall angel, again, targeting that thoracic spine. Assistance work, so dumbbell step up. So we've added load to the step up for this as the assistant work. It's very similar in our programming in terms of 10 each leg. Again, we're not coming into a fourth set. That actually shouldn't be there, sorry. And assistance work then, targeting the posterior chain, Swiss ball leg curl. Really nice, easy exercise to do. Targets the core, smashes the hamstrings. Really nice one to put in there for him, especially on that deadlift day. And then our conditioning here, we've got our exercise bike, 1,000 meters into a dowel overhead squat. So we're targeting their kind of mobility and strength as well. So it's a difficult one, but we're just trying to make his squat more efficient. Med ball slams, which will really spike the heart rate, a bit of power work in there. So a little bit of anaerobic into that circuit, and then Supermans into some core. So again, targeting the goals and trying to work through mobility as well. So that's what our program is going to consist of really moving forward. Week 2, you'll see that there's no changes. Okay. Week 3, you'll see that there's no changes here. So I'll highlight any changes. So up until week 5, we actually haven't changed anything. So you might look to change maybe the tempo of the exercises. You might really focus in on technique. The first 4 weeks is just making sure that he's adapting to the movement patterns themselves and getting back into acclimatizing to load. So we're not overloading here. So the first couple of weeks, we're just basically making sure he's competent in everything we're doing. Then when we move forward into week 5, we can actually start to look to increase. So we are then trying to overload slightly. So we're still in sensation phase. So we want to increase. I'm sorry, 1 second. I'll just get rid of that. So we're increasing the reps here first. So you can see in orange. So for the goblet squat, we've gone up to 12 reps, same weight, and we've increased the corrective exercise just a couple of reps. Also, the dumbbell RDL has gone up a couple of reps, and so has the lunge. And then we've added in another circuit. So we've just added in a little bit of an extra work there on the aerobic capacity. Here we've added in the couple of extras. So we've gone from 10 to 12, and we've kept the javelin stretch the same because it can be quite tough on the chest when you're doing it. 30 seconds is probably enough for now. We've increased a couple of reps here and here, and we've added in more so in that aerobic capacity. And then again, we've done the same. So you can see that incrementally, we're just upping things as we go along, and we're just making sure that the load is enough. So we link in and communicate with the client after each week to make sure that they're doing well. So here, again, we've moved on to week 6. So we haven't increased the primary lift here because it's not necessary to increase the primary lift every week. So this is down to how your client feels, how their DOMs have been, whether their movement competency is still increasing, or you might increase the weight too much and they've lost that technique. So you gotta, everything is individualized, but this is just a kind of example to show. So what we've done here, the only kind of increase is actually a decrease in time. So it was 60 to 90 seconds. We've reduced it to 60 now, and that is in itself an overload. Here, we've just increased the meters on the cardio machine, but we've kept 3 sets. Very similar here on the upper day. So we've reduced the rest time, reduced the meters, and same again. So very small basically improvements or making it harder, but they do actually really affect how things change. And again, here you'll see, so John has been tasked to actively up the intensity of his Saturday outing. So he's feeling a little bit better, and we're just giving him those little targets that he can do on his own as well. So it includes him in the programming a little bit and gives him a little bit more onus to make changes. Week 7, then you'll see that the reps of the primary exercise have gone up to 15, still on the same weight because we're not necessarily too concerned with strength development as such. We're looking at that strength endurance first and those neural adaptations. Dumbbell RDL, so our assistance work has gone up as well in reps. And then the circuit has dropped to 40 seconds between each round instead of 60. And we've made some improvements here. So we've added 5 kg to the bear hold. So we'll just sit that plate on his back. Again, primary has gone up to 15 reps, and we've reduced the rest time for the circuit. And similar again then on session 3. So 15 reps, 75 kg. And we've reduced the rest time in the circuit and increased some of the time for the med ball slams and Supermans. So you can see the pattern of what we're doing. So we're increasing the reps. We want to get to kind of in and around those 15. So here we've got week 8. So we've reduced the reps back to 12, and we've upped the weight just by a little bit. So to keep kettlebell up, and then we've added in another set. So we've actually gone from 3 by 15 up to 4 by 12. So we're still overloading there. We've gone up in weight again. So we've reduced the reps a little bit. So you can see that pattern throughout the programming. And then that's similar with what we've done here. So we've reduced in a full set of the primary. So we've reduced the reps to 12 again. And we've also increased the weight there. And that you'll see as we go along, small increments that go together. So week 9 then, so we're still in the sensation phase. So week 9, so week 8 was quite a big increase. So we've kept day 1 completely the same. Again, that'll be from feedback from the client. So we'll know that that's another week where we just do the same, no changes. You'll see here that we have a little note that says, so barbell bench press, so the increased test may have been just a little bit too much last week. So what we've done is we've reduced the reps and we've just worked on tempo. So we haven't increased the weight. We've just potentially slowed down the eccentric part of the movement just to overload through that way and make sure that our technique is spot on. So again, that's still overloading, but just through tempo alone. And here the only increase we've got is into a little bit more reps. So you can see as we go along, it's not premeditated. It all kind of moves with how the client is actually giving you feedback on what's happening. So goblet squat, we're into week 10. We've got 15 reps, 4 sets at 18 kg, which is great. So we're starting to increase now a little bit more. So that neural adaptation is really taking hold. We've gone up in reps here for the RDL, and we've added in yet another circuit to the conditioning. So we're getting fitter here. Obviously, we can see a change. Same. So lovely, just changing. So we've dropped the tempo back down to 311, and we've gone up in weight, and there's no pain there, which is a real good win for myself and John. So we're progressing forward. Again, a couple extra reps and then another set of conditioning. And then very similar here, just with the reps and the extra set. So we're nearly at the end of this phase. So now we're looking, we've upped the bear hold. We've reduced the reps to 12 because we've upped the weight. So now we're at 4 sets of 12 at 20 kg on the goblet squat. We've reduced the reps because we've increased the weight here on the RDL. So then primary here, we've got bench press, so 15 reps, no pain again, which is great, and the weight is nice and strong. And then we move into that last week. So we're here 15 reps, 20 kg, 4 sets. We've overloaded there, so that's quite a lot of volume. We've increased it to small, just increases. So you got your assistant single arm row. You're now doing 12 each arm with a nice strong 27.5 kg dumbbell, 3 sets. And then into your bicep curl. So you're looking at that kind of hypertrophy. So we've gone up in weight, and we're doing 3 or 4 sets, high volume, and we've upped the hyper extensions there. So the robustness of the lower back is getting stronger. Primary trap bar deadlift. Then we've gone to 10 reps here, and we've increased the weight because he likes to be strong through the lower body. And 15 reps of deadlift is quite a lot. So we've actually increased the weight more so here than the reps. And we've made that increase then here on the med ball slam. So you can see the improvement throughout. So when we go to actually look at the increase, so your primary lifts here, we've got your goblet squat. So we've got 3 by 10 at 16 kg. That's what we started off with. And we ended at 4 by 15 at 20 kg. So that's 30 extra reps at a heavier weight. But most importantly, the efficiency of movement has gone up. So the squat pattern has increased. So we've been working through that T-spine all the way through. So we know that effectively we can move into that back squat for our next phase, which will make even more improvements. So the bench press then 3 by 10 at 60. That's what we started at. We've then ended up 4 by 15 at 67 kg. So 30 extra reps at a heavier weight, but most importantly there without any pain. So we've ticked off 2 of the goals. Well, the most important goals that we're targeting. And then the deadlift, 3 by 10 at 75 is what we started at. We ended at 4 by 10 at 90, which is a full extra set at a considerably heavier weight. But what we're really targeting there is there's a clear increase in his fitness, as high rep deadlifts are quite taxing on the energy system. So we've got movement capacity nailed, neural adaptation achieved, robustness targeted, and then a readiness to progress. So you've seen a full outline there of how things actually go on the sensation phase.
Okay, that was absolutely fantastic, Dave. Thank you for that. A lot to consider there, guys. If you got it, great. If you didn't get it, don't worry. This is the way our system of education is designed, is that we want you to leave here being the best version of yourself in terms of being a personal trainer and a coach. So we will keep running these systems and these sessions with you guys until you get it. And also important, just to let you guys know, even when you finish the education with us, you'll always be in our student database, and forevermore you can jump in and out of these webinars moving forward. So a year down the road, you want to sharpen up in your programming or any workshops that we run, they're always going to be available to you guys. But going back to the workshop or the program stuff that Dave delivered there, that was absolutely fantastic. So we actually have loads of questions to get through here. So, okay, Dave, how would you go about working with a client that expects a different workout every time you have a session, as their perception of how personal training is delivered is different due to seeing people online, such as celebrities, doing sessions with PTs? This is different to a block-phased approach. So before you answer, Dave, let me just answer it. Yeah. What I would say to that is this. This is part of the role in terms of coaching science, to be able to educate the people that you work with about what's best for them. They're not the expert, you're the expert. In order for them to trust your expertise, you've got to distill trust in them. Being very prepared and having a plan laid out will distill that trust. So that's the first thing. And if you think back to the behavior change modules that we put into the program, it's all about habit change and changing people's beliefs around certain aspects of training. So that's what I would say in response to that. Second of all, right, if your client comes into you and they can do all the stuff that celebrities do on TV, like Kim Kardashian jumping up and down in boxes and all the rest of it, that's fine. Do that with them. But 99.9% of your clients will not be able to do that because they won't have the movement pattern control to do it. I can guarantee you Kim Kardashian has been trained for years on all of her movement stuff. So when she does get on TV, she doesn't look like a plonker, being unable to do exercises properly. So, I mean, there's many, many years of training gone into whatever celebrity you're looking at before they actually make it on TV, show you them training on TV. So that will be my take on that. But Dave, have you got anything on that?
Yeah, well, I just think that when you, obviously your interviewing stage and your assessment stage, that shows that you know what you're talking about. It's a lot of value in that. And when you do that, your client will start to instill a bit more confidence in you as a coach and what you're saying. The other thing is, to be a good coach, you have to obviously target what the client wants and what you want. So how you would do that, or how I would do that in the past, is you can make your warm-up as fun as you like. So you know what you need to target, but there's many, many different ways of changing the exercises in the warm-up. And also your accessory phase, that also gives you a chance to maybe change things around a little bit. So as long as you're focused on your PAA system and that's consistent throughout the training phase, your PA system, your primary and assistive, your accessory can be a little bit more changeable, where you can actually change things around, because that's really focused on proprioception, energy system development, and your hypertrophy if you need it. So yeah, you can change your exercises there on your accessory phase, absolutely, and that keeps them interested. Yeah, and you can make that as fun as possible or geared to what they like.
So good point, and I should have mentioned that. Remember, speak to the client, get the goal, drive the goal home with the primary exercise, and at the end of the program is where you can mix it up a little bit and have a little bit of change, like Dave said.
They might not even, to begin with, they might not even realize that the primary phase is the most important part because they're enjoying the accessory part so much. But after the sensation part, I can tell you that they will eventually realize that you know what you're talking about, and they will make that change because they will have spent so many years not reaching their goals by doing ad hoc sessions. So once they start hitting their goals, they start to realize that you know what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have some technical stuff still on the programs, but some people want you to re-explain P2 athlete training assessment and P6 periodization. So P2, first of all, the athlete training assessment.
So in the, let me just get it back.
Put your spreadsheet back up there again.
We'll get it back up now and have a look.
Guys, keep the questions coming in. Anything you want to run by us, just pop them up there and I will get to them and we'll answer them.
So let's have a look at P2. So this is your client assessment training. So this is basically what we're looking at here. So when we look at movement quality, so that's your squat competency test. So that's the movement quality webinar we touched on, and you'll see it in the module. So that's all that one's geared towards. So your lower body strength and your upper body strength. So in terms of what I would assess there, so if I was assessing someone with a high training age, I knew that they were kind of more athletic development and they were robust enough to test maybe a 3 rep max squat or, you know, a deadlift or a bench, then I might potentially test that straight off the bat if I knew they were robust enough to do that. But because John has been out of training so long, this is just not where I need to be. You risk injury here with this if you're not able to do the movements themselves. And I don't know how well he squats or benches or anything.
I think I think what they're asking is, how do you fill out in terms of numbers? So as in like the movement quality there, like what's the aim in terms of movement quality? Is it to be a 10 out of 10? And where is he currently at now at the moment after having completed the squat competency test?
Yeah, so I mean, ideally someone is a 10 out of 10. That would be fantastic, but it's very difficult to get that, especially if you haven't trained in so long. So when you're looking at your squat pattern, basically you're grading what the movement competency is like, and this is what you're going off. So poor, average, or excellent. So that's more down to a subjective assessment on yourself, and you get better at that. So obviously if there's pain, it's just a no straight away. But if you break down the movement into whether you would consider it excellent. So you've had a look at ankle, knee, hip, thoracic spine. If they're all ticked off the list where you're happy with that movement pattern, then that would be an excellent. Say for instance, like John, his lower leg movement, so from ankle, knee, and hip is all really good, but he's got clear tightness in his upper back, then he's basically missing a score there. So I would stick him down as an average. So that would be a 2.
Just jump back to the sheet for one more second. P2. Yeah. So like Dave had highlighted there, some of those are not applicable at the moment. So but the lower body strength, he has no way of testing that because the strength endurance there isn't enough of a foundation to test that. So it's not applicable. But if you think it is applicable and someone comes to you with a half decent training age, they've maybe had 2 or 3 years structured training, you can input that information into there. If you input the information into movement quality, lower and upper body strength endurance, robustness, and fitness levels, the spider graph on the right-hand side of the screen will populate, and you will know where the client wants to get to, which is the aim, and where the client currently is now. And it will show you areas that you need to work on. So again, it's subjective. Currently it's subjective, like Dave had mentioned. And what you're trying to do is, going back to what I had mentioned at the start of the presentation, you're trying to establish and set goals for your client and yourself so that you have something to aim for and achieve. So there's no right or wrong here. Obviously there's right and wrong in terms of the strength endurance test, what the score of it is, but you're not required to put in lower body and upper body strength if your client does not have the capacity to test in that's whatever, I suppose, modality at the moment. So Dave, just jump on to P6 there because we have loads of questions coming in. I just want to make sure that we get through them all. The question on P6 was, they just wanted you to explain this. So I actually created this here, so I'll explain it if that's all right, Dave.
Yeah, of course.
So guys, this is just simply, if you think back to the pyramid that I had, this is simply a graphical representation of that pyramid laid out for you in blocks. So the first phase of kind of block 1, block 2, block 3 is the first phase of training, and that basically signifies your sensation phase. The block 4, 5, and 6 is your potentially is where you will put in your tolerance phase, and then block 7, 8, 9 is where you will put in your realization phase. So again, it's for you as the coach to be able to just lay out an overall periodization plan of what the client is going to do and where you want to bring the client and what qualities you're trying to address and develop in each block of training. Yeah, that's simply all it is. So you see phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then you just identify what qualities you're trying to address in those different phases of training.
Yeah.
So you're able to sit down with your client and you're able to say, this is where I am today. This is where you are today. And this is where I, as the coach, want to bring you. These are the phases we have to go through. We might have some hiccups along the way or some obstacles we have to overcome in terms of movement or injury, but we have it mapped out. We know where we need to get to. So it's a lot easier, and it's a lot easier to stay on track, and it's a lot easier to achieve our goal now that we have it on paper and it's identifiable first. So that's what this periodization model is. There's no point in getting any more in-depth into periodization at this stage of your education. By all means, go and study periodization models, but in terms of what you're trying to achieve, keeping the focus on movement, exercise programming, and nutrition, you just need to have an overview of the periodization plan and the block approach you're trying to apply to it to achieve what you need to achieve. Okay, can you explain what numbers in tempo means 4, 3, 2, 1 or tempo 1, 2, 1, Dave?
Yeah, so there you're just looking at your eccentric, your pause, and your concentric. So essentially it's a 2, 1, 1 would be, and a squat would be 2 seconds on the way down, pause for 1 second, 1 second on the way up. So that's essentially what you're working on there. So you're focused on eccentric, pause, concentric.
And what's a 4, 2, 1?
So a 4, 2, 1, 4 seconds on the way down, 2 second pause, 1 second concentric.
Okay, so the first number is the eccentric, the second number is the isometric, and the third number is the concentric, which is the push. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. That's great. Oh, sorry. Questions are flying in here. Apologies. So okay. The Excel sheet you've downloaded only has 4 weeks of programming. Yeah, if you go back and re-download that now, that should have 12 weeks of programming in it. If it doesn't have the 12 weeks of programming, the programs are actually blank. So you just copy the Excel and build out your 12 weeks of programming. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so sorry, a couple more questions here, and then we'll wrap it up. Why did you pick a goblet squat to start with, Dave?
Because on the squat assessment, we knew that he had a tight thoracic spine. So he's got that roundness in his shoulders and that kyphosis posture. So the way we target that would be a front squat or a goblet squat. Front squat can be a little bit challenging initially, because if you have tight lats, you can't get your elbows up high enough. So if you do a goblet squat or even a front rack front squat, that targets the thoracic spine. So it's essentially a mobility exercise while we work through that strength endurance as well. So basically you want to pick the best exercise to target the stuff that you're trying to achieve. And that squat pattern is the best for someone with a tight upper back. Okay.
And the last question is, why was there no change over weeks 1 to 4?
So weeks 1 to 4 is your client has to acclimatize it. So this person hasn't trained in 8 to 10 years, and then you're getting them to do a structured 3 sessions a week. So that in itself is enough load. So you don't need to overload there before he acclimatizes to that. I mean, that can be shorter or longer. Obviously, it's individually based, but there's really no need to start overloading straight off the bat, because he hasn't acclimatized to the movement patterns originally anyway. Okay. So you want to get neural adaptation first before you overload.
Okay, super. Okay, that's all the questions. Any more questions, guys? I don't think so. That's everyone. Thank you very much for listening to myself and Dave. I hope we didn't open Pandora's box for you, but we highlighted to you a process or a step-by-step system that you can apply when programming. When leaving the webinar, guys, there's a questionnaire, and please fill that out, because that's so important to us to be able to focus on what we need to focus on when we're educating you guys digitally over Zoom like this. And other than that, thank you very much. I appreciate everyone giving up their time, and I hope everyone got everything from it. Dave, thank you very much. Mihal, thank you very much as well. And until next time, guys.
Lovely.